Spider-Man Homecoming was directed by John Watts, who made the film Cop Car, a pretty overlooked film with Kevin Bacon. Check it out if you get a chance. And it stars Tom Holland as Spider-Man, reprising his role that he was introduced in Civil War. And this is the sixth big screen Spider-Man adaptation we've seen since 2002, and we are finally getting to see the Vulture, portrayed by Michael Keaton in this film, who really likes to play characters that are like flying creature related. Here we're introduced to a Peter Parker who's in high school for the entire movie. He has high school kid problems. He has to get to school on time. He's got to make it to homecoming dance. He's at a decathlon. He has to do all of this stuff while balancing being Spider-Man, and that's what makes Spider-Man great, the character. The fact that he's just a normal kid who has everyday problems. And Stan Lee has said countless times that that's why he feels the public relates to Spider-Man so much, because most people are afraid of spiders. So why does everyone like Spider-Man? Because he's like us. He's got everyday problems, but he's also a superhero. And Tom Holland portrayed both Spider-Man and Peter Parker beautifully. The character has a lot of innocence and a lot of purity. And that's what's so important about Peter Parker. It's not just the fact that he has superhero powers, but he's an everyday kid in school with problems, but he's also this amazing superhero. At the same time, he's very naive and he's very innocent. And they captured that really well. And I could not be happier with this iteration of the character because I'm a humongous fan. He's been one of my favorites my whole life. And so whenever I see a Spider-Man movie, I guess I probably judge it more harshly than most would because the character is so close to my heart, which is why I haven't liked a Spider-Man movie in 13 years. That's bad. This is easily the best that Spidey has been since '04. This is an adaptation that understands the character, but also understands that it needs to be something different. This isn't just another rehash of what we've already seen before. One of the things that I really couldn't stand about the first Amazing Spider-Man was that it basically went through the exact same motions that Sam Raimi did in '02, except nowhere near as fun and nowhere near as well directed or written. It was the same old shit, just in a different way. Homecoming is very much so its own film. No other Spider-Man film is like this. The filmmakers said while they were making it that they wanted to make a high school movie, that they were inspired by teenage high school films, and it's very clear while watching it. Some might not like that because there's a surprising amount of downtime in this movie that you would normally not expect in a superhero film or a Spider-Man film, let alone because you want him to be swinging around being Spider-Man a lot. But this movie does take a lot of time to show Peter in school. Yes, he has his crushes. Yes, he's a gigantic nerd and people don't like him and Flash Thompson picks on him. But at the same time, you're building appreciation for him as a youth, not just for him in his suit being Spider-Man. The movie allows you to have those moments where you can just watch him trying to be a kid. Because as I said, that's what's so important about the comics and that character, is that you feel that balance. It was also really exciting to finally see Vulture in a Spider-Man film because back in the day, Raimi was going to do that for Spider-Man 4, but the plans fell through. And Michael Keaton did a really great job. And not just because I like Michael Keaton. His character had a surprising amount of depth to him that I was not anticipating. I won't ruin it for you just in case you guys don't know the direction his character goes, but it took me off guard considerably. But even before that, they gave you a reason to care about his plight. They also treated him like a scavenger because he's basically going around trying to steal things to use for himself. And that's kind of how a vulture actually does things, like they're scavengers. Really, all the casting was good. Marisa Tomei as a younger Aunt May was a really nice change of pace. You're gonna get annoyed with certain casting choices if you're the kind of person that wants everything to look and feel exactly like it did in the comics. If you're okay with change, you're going to be okay with certain things that occur in this movie. But if you're the type of person that wants everything to be exactly the same way that it was in the comics and will eventually go online and rant about how some change was made to one of your favorite characters, then more than likely some things are going to piss you off in this film, which I can understand, but it didn't bother me, and I'm a huge fan of the Spidey comics. What did bother me is the fact that this movie could also be called Spider-Man Buy an Audi Right Now. It didn't help that before the screening started, there was like 8 Audi commercials and a guy like talking about how he was extremely excited about Spider-Man partnering with Audi. And then during the film, you get to see Spidey driving one and the brake system is working and stuff. Like some guy after the movie ended stood up and was like, I don't understand why Spider-Man would need those brake detecting systems. He has Spidey sense. And I'm like, yeah, but he's also a kid and he's never really driven before, except in the film he says, in a parking lot. So I like the fact that he needed help in the car. That he's just a kid. He's never driven before. He doesn't have his license. That's what makes Spider-Man so endearing, is the fact that he is so innocent. Still, there's an absurd amount of Audi product placement in this movie, and it got a little annoying after a while. This is a Sony and Marvel collaboration, so of course, Sony. Product placement.
It is inevitable.
Also, like I said, there is a lot of downtime in this movie. Time where you're just with Peter in high school, and sometimes the pacing can drag. It's nice to experience a more slow-moving Spider-Man film, but I can see some young kids thinking, a little boring. In fact, one of our friends, his 6-year-old, said it was kind of boring. But he's 6, so I mean, he just wants to see Spider-Man being Spider-Man. This might be the Spider-Man movie for comics fans who just want to see their beloved webhead portrayed correctly on the screen in the way they'd like them to. They're going to get that, but as I said, there are some changes made to certain characters that are integral to Spider-Man, and some people who want everything to be perfect are going to be upset about that. One of my major flaws with the movie is that I really wish the action had a more visceral sense to it. That was something that Raimi did so well. His action scenes were brutal and intense. You could feel the sweat. The action scenes in this movie are enjoyable. They're fun. Spider-Man does Spider-Man stuff, and you can have a fun time watching it. But it didn't really feel like there were enough stakes in the action scenes. There's a very elongated boat scene where the boat splits in half. And I felt that sequence was handled rather ham-fisted. There could have been a lot more intensity to it. And certain things happen where you're like, wait, did he just okay, that makes no sense. Whatever, it's a Spider-Man movie. He was bit by a radioactive spider. Shut the fuck up. Also, I found that the movie couldn't quite escape this feeling of being slightly inconsequential. It feels like you're watching a lot of events that set up Spider-Man to be involved in the Marvel universe. But it doesn't really feel like anything of major stakes is happening where you can get really invested in it. Nothing like the ending of the first Spider-Man where he's in that abandoned hospital getting the shit kicked out of him and Goblin is talking about how he's gonna kill Mary Jane. Nothing like in Spider-Man 2 when he's got his mask off and the citizens of that train see him and you think, my God, he's gonna rip himself apart. There's never a moment like that in this movie. It's a fairly lighthearted, enjoyable watch. For some, that might be really great. I was hoping for a little more intensity. I was hoping for something to happen that made me feel like people were actually in danger. Because the body count is also surprisingly low. Which, again, I understand. He's a kid in high school. And this isn't Spider-Man so much as it is, he's almost Spider-Man. This movie is kind of like not an origin story about his powers and Uncle Ben, but an origin story of how he becomes Spider-Man, like growing from Spider-Boy to Spider-Man. It's important, and that's one of the major themes of the movie, is whether or not the suit is what he needs to be powerful, or if he can be Spider-Man without the suit. So sometimes, yes, the film does feel a little bit lighthearted and not as exciting or as intense as I was hoping it was going to be. Michael Giacchino's score is one of the better recent Marvel scores, but it is still in the shadow of Danny Elfman's incredible themes that he made for Spider-Man, and I feel like that's just always going to be the best Spider-Man theme. Robert Downey Jr.'s appearances in the film were, of course, entertaining. I mean, it's pretty hard to watch Downey as Tony Stark and not feel some level of entertainment. But at the same time, there are a lot of moments in this movie where you're like, oh, there's a character from that. Oh, there's a character from that. Okay. He's an Avenger now, right? He's in the Avenger universe. Like, there are times where you feel like you're just watching this and you're like, all right, I get it. It's setting up more. That's fine. It's just some Marvel films stand alone so well, like Winter Soldier is one of the best, where you're like, that is a great Marvel movie. It doesn't feel like it's becoming anything else. Like, I loved Civil War, but let's admit it, that was a big, like, everyone comes together. It's a big Marvel extravaganza setting up all kinds of things. That, like, you know what I mean? Like, some Marvel movies really stand alone really well as exciting. This feels like a perfectly enjoyable Spider-Man movie where they really captured the character and they played it fairly safe. It also addresses certain things in Spider-Man movies that they've never addressed before, like what would happen if there were no buildings and he had to get somewhere? I guess he'd just have to run. Or what if he was swinging through a neighborhood? Well, that's kind of low to the ground, I guess. That sucks. The movie does feel like another Marvel movie in the middle of a bunch of other Marvel movies, but it's well directed, it's well acted, and it's a great interpretation of the character, and I had a lot of fun watching it. It's also pretty funny. I'm going to give Spider-Man Homecoming a B. Definitely go out and see this one if you're a major fan of Spider-Man. I feel like most people are going to be really happy with this movie. I enjoyed it overall. I'd like to hear what you guys thought of it when you get a chance to see it. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.